Hello. Thanks for coming. I was just sitting in the corner watching people coming over. I was like, yes, that's for my talk. And yeah, so I have 20 minutes and lots of stuff to tell. So I'll be talking fast. And for this talk, I wanted to make a small, well, experiment, if you call it like that. I'll cover like the juiciest, the complex technology part right on the start of my talk. For those who, busy running into a meeting and all that, who has like 3 minutes, it's gonna be here. And then I'm gonna explain what, how, and all that. So, the short thing. The short thing is, within King, we use 3 game engines: Unity, Fiction Factory, and Defold. So, Fiction Factory is the one that we use to build Candy Crush Saga and like some of the other titles. Defold is the new one that we're building some of the new IPs, and Blossom Blast Saga, that's the first published Saga franchise game with Defold. And Unity. Do you know any Unity game that King has published? You don't. And that's the proper answer, because there is we don't because we don't. We do develop games with Unity. We never publish them because, and that's what my talk is about, pretty much. Not like why we don't use Unity, but like the internal processes. Don't get me wrong. And now we'll start the actual talk. So this is me, and why would you listen to me? Well, first, I've been around for a while. Unity Technologies, since that was a small startup in a hut in Frederiksberg outside of Copenhagen, like it was 6 years after, went into a game development company, spent 1.5-ish there, games production for the win, like I've been there, and like lots of technology guys, and now at King. I'm within a King technology department, joined mostly for the job, like King Evangelist. Can you invent a cooler job title? Right. And I don't just travel and talk about technology. I also care about some complex things, such as game engine roundtables. I've done a few, assembling the big guys from the top game engines and having them discuss about the industry challenges, and like befriending Unity and Unreal and Lumberyard and Defold. It's kind of fun. Game dev streaming, I think that's the next big thing. As in, when all those people on Twitch gonna watch not people playing the game, but people making games, how to make that in an exciting and engaging way, that's a complex problem. I'm working with different people of solving that. Offline game jams, that's also cool. I'm a strong believer in game jams. I think that's the way to move the industry forward. And I feel that there are lots of places where offline game jams could be very cool, and like how to make that, I'm working on that. If you care as well, do talk to me. Now, after we eventually met each other, so this very simple slide explains why do we need to care to talk about technology? Like why I made this presentation here today. It's interesting that here I have different slides. Well, yeah, okay. Anyways, let's. No. Yeah, it's fine. It's right. So, right. Where was I? Right. So, what do we need like to ship a game? Well, first, like the game engine provides like the tools you use. Then you make an APK or whatever executable file. You upload it. That used to be before. Now, when we talk about like making games, in most cases we actually talk about mobile games, since like that's what indies can do these days. Also, we're talking about free-to-play games, since you don't have much other options on mobiles, and somehow I missed my slides. But yeah, it's even more fun with that. So my talk today, with all the messed up slides and a bit of dancing because of that, is what the processes that we have inside to actually develop and ship free-to-play mobile titles that are dedicated for casual audience. And casual audience is a very different audience. It's people who still use, for example, Android gingerbread devices. Do we have people old enough to know what is Android gingerbread? Anybody? Yeah, I see a few people nodding. So that's Android 2.3. I think it's about 2% of King audience, and good luck finding game engines that support that. So, but we care about these people. We care about startup times, and that's what this slide is about. That in order for all the marketing efforts, for all this traffic efforts, for all these partnerships efforts to actually make sense for the game has to load fast, and like fast as in seconds. The importance for that is what is called meaningful completed games sections. Meaningful and completed. As in the time frame when a player wants to play a casual kind of title is very limited, and like the player normally knows, I have like 5, maybe 6 minutes. I want to start playing the game and finish it. If I'm not convinced that I can do it, I'll check the Twitter, check Facebook, check emails, whatsoever. That's what I'm saying, like meaningful and completed. That's why the startup time should be within, like, not only for the game, but for the game session. Should be within seconds, and we benchmark that. Also the battery drain. Like if you think players play games upon commute, right? So when in the morning, when they go to the office, they have full battery, they're fine playing any other game. In the evening, when they're coming back from the office, home, what's their battery status is? 30%, 20%, maybe? So obviously, if a game drains battery, a player would be hesitant to launch that. And the less frequently the player launches your game, like the player forgets about your game, the player gets used to a different game, and your game gets like lower and lower into priorities. So that's what we care about, that's what we do tests. Network performance. I spoke to lots of people here and at different events, and like, yeah, we're doing mobile game, we need lots of like analytics, and yeah, our game requires persistent connection to the server. Right, but like what about the trains, airplanes, tunnels, rural areas, developing markets where the internet are not that good on mobiles? Do we get to these players? We do, and we care about that. Then storage consumption. I'm not talking about the initial download size, because everybody talks about that. I'm talking about the updates. So when we're talking about free-to-play game on mobiles, we do the updates, bi-weekly updates, bi-monthly updates. This is the data. It's not only about the features, it's about the content. Where do you store all that content? It adds up and adds up and adds up to the game, right? So each month you ship 20, 50, maybe 100 megs of additional content, and it gets stored somewhere on some user's device. For example, Christmas update pack, right? In a few weeks, when most people, or like the given player, has consumed the Christmas pack content, what happens with the content? Does it stay on the device and just and takes the time, takes the space? Especially in developed markets. like with storage on the devices, like they still have 16, maybe sometimes 8 gig devices, and they use these apps that determine the storage offending apps and games, and your game would be deleted. So we actually do performance tests for, obviously we also test like CPU consumption, operating system memory consumption, and all other obvious tests within King portfolio, right? And also for the new developed games, so like for the released games and for the developing games in development. And but those 4 things I've put here on the slides, since it's not often that you hear about that. And would you care about that? And that's why it's here. Cool. Now back to the slide. When we're talking about mobile games, it's like the way it works is we have a portfolio and such things as social features, business analytics, like various admin page for prices, for in-game items and goods, state, save file synchronization. This is all on the networking backend, and this is the so-called shared technology within our portfolio, and like that's the only way you can keep the games portfolio pretty much. And that's why all these casual games today need this online backend thing, otherwise you cannot scale. But like this is common stack, and this is aside from the games. The games just have to use it. The technology stack that that I want to focus today is actually the runtime technology, not the backend technology. So for the runtime, again, we use Defold and Fiction Factory as so-called shipping engines. We still do lots and lots of development with Unity. I mean, Unity is a great tool. No one pretty much can beat it, I guess, in terms of speed of prototyping, speed of development the game. But then when the game gets greenlit, then we have to run the tests, like, how fast would the game start up? How fast would the levels load? How fast, like, something happens? What technology do you need to download updates? And again, for free-to-play games, you need to do this very, very often. How fast can you create the levels? How deep can you integrate that with, for example, our network backend? And lots of other questions. And that's when it comes to, well, our teams have to use eventually Fiction Factory, which is an internal lots of ugly SDKs kind of thing, or Defold. I've put it here as a kind of takeaway thing, since that's what you can take away from the session. Defold, like not only the insight that, if you want to make a great game, you have to make a great game, but also this piece of technology that we use inside. That's good for all our performance considerations and requirements. The technology that allows us to release games for all these global markets to cater to people with very different devices, with very different habits. So that's the technology that actually is internal and is driven by internal teams, but actually it is available for free to everybody to use. Like if you earn 2 million tomorrow with that, we're happy about you. We wouldn't take a cut. So feel free to earn that money. The cool thing is that it's developed by King, for King. It's just free. It's also the bad thing. The good thing is that, well, whenever a big platform comes to us, say, you know what, on the 7th of September, we're releasing a new thing, and why don't you support this in some of your coolest games? And this games team would come to us saying, you know what, like engine people, we need this cool thing implemented. So this allows this engine to support the cool things of the big platforms on day zero. So that's the cool thing about the engine. The less cool thing about the engine is that the roadmap is actually mostly driven by our internal needs, meaning that, for example, Steam. Do you know any King games on Steam? No? No? Yeah, correct, you don't. That's because we don't release on Steam. But some of the indies who actually use Defold, like they care about Steam. And they come to us saying, you know what, like, what about Defold for Steam? And then we're saying, you know what, like you have to care about this yourself. Or we might help you a bit. But so those are good sides and bad sides. Like a short pitch just of the picture is totally irrelevant. I mean, it's just a cool picture. The short pitch about the engine is it's exactly the engine made by kind of games that King does, right? So fast, performant, 2D games designed for multi-platform. These games work on, like properly work on HTML5, even on the mobile web browser. So like this is the technology that we care about, and this is how we develop the engine. And the scripting language is Lua. Rendering loop is open, as in if you can write in OpenGL, feel free to. Shaders are in JSL. So like if the engine assumes you have at least a single very technical person on the team, all the others can be less technical, and you should know what you're doing like as a team. Then you would have a perfect experience with Defold. Right, so that's exactly how we function at King. Very important slide. I'm not converting you to, like, I'm not stopping like, you know what, drop whatever using, switch to our thing, switch to our technology. It's not. I'm just saying, like, this is how we do. If you feel we do it right, and it kind of correlates to your biorhythms, feel free to try out this technology. It's free. It's like no monies. And a short takeaway, while we still have 3 minutes, is the games have to be designed for the top grossing charts. Remember me saying, you know, the startup times, battery, storage consumptions, and other benchmarks. So in order for all these marketing initiatives to actually be efficient, the game should technologically work well. So if runtime performance is poor, well, I mean, it might spoil all these marketing efforts. Part of our internal technology and tools is shared as Defold Game Engine. It's free, so feel free to use it. It's awesome for 2D cross-platform games and designed to perform well on low-end devices and the web. And now I have a question. I have this nice video about King Office. Or we do the Q&A. If no one raises the hand, we're going to watch the video.
So overall, since we built the last office, King has kept growing. We've added so much great talent to the company, and I think as we grow, we need to create more space.
So instead of kind of carrying the baggage of the past, we wanted to have an environment whereby, you know, you get a clean slate in your head and you can then work forward without any kind of restraints.
When people come down here the first time, everybody's like, oh my God, you have a forest.
I think the forest is amazing. I think the forest is mind-blowing. You come in and it's like you're being hugged by the actual studio, which is an incredible feeling.
Space around here is really, really cozy and calm. For me, as a producer, I need space where I can think, where I can explore. Having this calm area, it sort of oozes energy.
There are a
lot of spaces in general where you can go. It's not only the forest. We have the meeting rooms, we have small different areas where you can actually go.
There's a lot of places for people to meet for more intimate conversations or kind of brainstorming sessions that are really useful and fruitful if looking for new ideas.
Just wanted to share like
the cool thing is that all the projections on the ground are actually interactive, so when you walk on them it'll like make some kind of sound as if you're walking through water or you're walking on ice.
The purpose of the forest at K36 was to create an area where nothing is basically required of you. You don't have to produce, you can just sit and just be yourself. And in those moments of pause, I think, is when the greatest creative things happen.
I think it's an interesting office because we're in the middle of town. It's really a buzzy area of Stockholm, and at the same time when you come into the office it's a calm, great environment to work and concentrate in. So I think you get that blend of a great place to be and a great place to work.
Great place to be and great place to work. I just wanted to show the environment where the teams reside and the engine team does reside. It's kind of a cool collaboration thing. And well, this is how we consume the time for the Q&A session. But I'm available here, and feel free to catch me.
Thank you very much.